With HR planning, we are moving the first time now to the operative human resource management. Human resource planning has to be seen very close in relationship to the strategy because it helps the strategy to be implemented. And to do this, we need the required number of persons with the required competencies at the right time, at the right spot to be successful. Therefore, human resource planning is always a balancing act between having too many people and have too less people in our organization. Because if we have too many people, it will cost too much, and if we have too less people, we are not able to be successful to run our operations on the long term. For example, if we are planning to open a new we have a restaurant and we are planning to open a second one. So we need sufficient people at the right time to have to be able to open the restaurant on time. Human resource planning can be defined as a process by which an organization ensures that it has the right number and the right kind of people at the right place at the right time, capable of effectively and efficiently complete those tasks that will help the organization achieving its overall objective. The HR planning process is illustrated in this figure. Note that strategic planning precedes HR planning. HR planning has two components: requirements and availability. The requirements forecast involves determining the number, skills and location of employees the organization will need at future date to meet its goals. The availability forecast is the determination of whether the firm will be able to secure employees with the necessary skills and from what sources. When employee requirements and availability have been analyzed, the firm can determine whether it will have a surplus or shortage of employees. Ways must be found to reduce the number of employees if a surplus is projected. If a worker shortage is forecasted, the firm must obtain the proper quantity and quality of workers from outside the organization. Doing HR planning, we have to take into consideration two main factors. These are internal factors and there are external factors. And due to them, we have to design our activities. For example, internal factors, we have the strategy to open a new restaurant. We have a restaurant in Berlin and want to open a new restaurant in Leipzig. And therefore, this could be a factor influencing our activities. So but then also we have to consider what is happening in the external environment. Are there sufficient people available on the labor market in Leipzig? And based on these factors, we are designing our activities. Do we recruit someone? Do we train someone? Do we lay people off? In a face-to-face context, we would do now group work. But therefore, I would like that you take now 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and think about what could be internal factors, what could be external factors influencing our HR planning. For example, our restaurant. We have quite a number of people who are very brilliant in the restaurant in Berlin. They could be, by a short training, they could be the managers of the new restaurants, or they could be the chefs in the new restaurant. So we have to develop them. That's the potential, that's the talent. Or the external factors could be that the working conditions in Leipzig are very much favorable to people. So we can recruit people by attracting them to come over to Leipzig because the area around is very booming at the moment. And these are factors we have to consider in planning our activities. On this page, you can see some of the factors from the external environment, which helps us to determine what we are going to do. For example, if you look, we are still in our plans are still to open a new restaurant in Leipzig, and we have to see what support could we get from the government in Leipzig, from there to open a restaurant. Are workforce available on the market? What kind of workforce is available? Are there qualitative chefs there that we can recruit them from the market, or do we have to bring them in from Berlin? What are developments in the sectors, changes in the market structure? These are all things, influences we have to take into consideration. The HR planning is also very much influenced, of course, by the internal factors. These are the corporate strategy, our plan to open a new restaurant in Leipzig. But it's also the hierarchy influencing our planning. How many different layers do we have in a restaurant? What kind of people do we need? How many people do we need? Taking also into consideration what is the normal staff turnover in a restaurant, in the service sector. These are all aspects we have to analyze very carefully, and we have to take into consideration. HR planning, we said, is a comparison between requirement and availability. So therefore, we have to forecast the requirement. We are going to open a new restaurant in Leipzig, and therefore we have to estimate how many people do we need, for the new restaurant, but also we have to analyze what kind of people we need for our new restaurant. We call this the quantitative requirement. This means the number of people we need, but also the qualitative requirement. This means we have to determine the qualification, what people have to be able to work in such a position, in the positions we have to foresee. So this means that we have to calculate how many people with what qualifications we need in the future. And this is the cross-human resource requirement. Beside forecasting our requirement, we have also to forecast the availability of the people we have in the future. This means how many people, what is the number, the quantitative HR availability, but also what kind of people, the qualitative availability, what kind of skills, what competencies do they have. And this we have to see in comparison with the external resources, with the labor market. And then we have to decide, do we hire people or do we outsource, or what we are going to do? Or do we bring people from Berlin to our new restaurant in Leipzig? While calculating the HR availability in the near future, we have to take into consideration incoming and outgoing persons. So this means we have an autonomous staff turnover, we have an increase because people are coming back after maternity leave, people are coming back after sabbatical, or we have a decrease because people are going on retirement or could die. And what we have also to take into consideration are initiated staff turnover. This is that we have an apprentice whom we give a permanent contract, or we have a contingent workers which services are brilliant, so we keep them. But we have also a decrease by people, we lay people off, or we send someone to a long-term training. So in our planning parameters, we have to differentiate between cross requirement and net requirement. Cross requirement, we said before, are the number of people we estimate to have and the kind of qualification they should have. And this we compare with the staff inventory. This means we compare them with how many people and what kind of people we estimate to have in the future. And based on this comparison, we receive the net requirement, and the net requirement give us then the concrete actions we are going to do in the future. On this slide, you can see a graphic illustrating the difference between cross and net requirement. We do this for a specific job category. This means that actually T0, we have a number of 50 persons. And in the future, in T1, which might be 3 years, we estimate to need 100 persons of this job category. But now we have to calculate how many people are leaving our organization because they are going on maternity leave, or they are they go into pension, and how many people are coming back from a sabbatical, being hired because they were contingent workers, and so we have an increase um, of persons. So at the end, we can see that the net requirement, this means the person we really need, would be just 30 people. Compared to the slide before, we have here an overlap in the net requirement. This means actually we have the 50 people. In the future, we estimate to have 100 persons. But in between that period of 3 years, we have a decrease, a slight decrease, but we have a very high increase of people because we have a lot of people coming from apprenticeship and take them over, or coming from a merger or whatsoever to our organization. At the end, we have 110 and we need only 100. So this means we have an overlap of 10 people and we have to lay people off. To end the session on HR planning, I would like to take some minutes to talk about techniques and methods. How can we forecast the requirements and the availability? And there we have to clearly differentiate between quantitative forecasters and qualitative forecasters. Quantitative forecasting could mean that we do a simple estimate, or we do a survey that HR department asks different departments for quantitative and qualitative needs, and we do a bottom-up approach starting from the lowest level, and each level of the thought of the organization will be forecasted. Or we ask the managers or the department managers, but we can also ask an external person who has experience in this respect and does this for other organizations. Another method of quantitative forecast are the key figure method, and I will come to this in 1 minute. So one method of the quantitative forecasting are the key figure methods. This is a method where you look for a stable relationship between HR requirement and certain references. So if you look to the example on the right-hand side, how many people do you think we would need to achieve 120 million euros? Another way to do the quantitative forecasting is using formula. Here you have two different ways of formulas. You have the BDR formula and you have the Schlüter's formula. And the right-hand side you can see an example, and beyond each formula you can see how is the calculation done. The qualitative forecasting means what kind of competencies or qualifications the person should have to be successful in our future restaurant or in our future organization. Therefore, we analyze the jobs. We identify what kind of qualifications and competencies are needed, and this we compare with the people we have. So maybe we have someone in our restaurant in Berlin who is already a very good chef, but we have already the chief chef in Berlin, so we can transfer the person maybe to the restaurant in Leipzig or the future restaurant, and we can develop him, we can train them to be able to work in Leipzig.